Hey, thanks for coming back to the channel. Today on the table we have one of my favorite over and under shotguns from the late 60s through the 70s. This is an Ithaca SKB Model 600. Very sweet little Japanese-made over and under shotgun, imported by the Ithaca Gun Company during that time period. And a little bit of history of SKB as an order. Things like most other, particularly shotgun companies, have changed significantly over the years with SKB, but they're an old company. They go way back until the mid-1850s. About 1855 is when they really started in Japan. And they were producing shotguns with some exportation around the world, but very little importation and very little presence in the U.S. market all the way through the first half of the 20th century. The guns were being made and produced and sold. Small numbers. There really weren't a big production shop, and there really wasn't any significant importation into the United States until 1966. And that's when SKB entered into their agreement with the Ithaca Gun Company, and they began importing the Model 500 and the Model 600 over and under shotgun. This is a Model 600 in 20 gauge. This particular gun is a 20 gauge Model 600, 26-inch barrels, modified and improved cylinder chokes on this gun. So it is a field grade gun. And we start to see these guns in the 1966 catalog. So initially the gun was only available in 12 gauge with 2 3/4 inch chambers only. So before we get into all that, when 20 gauge came out, let's talk more about SKB. So 66, they start, Ithaca begins importation of the SKB line under the Model 500, 600, then the 700, the 800. And then there's some submodels also that we'll talk about with straight stocks and things like that. But that continued until 1978. In 78, Ithaca declared bankruptcy, one of the several times that Ithaca's declared bankruptcy in that company's career. So importation shifted to a company called Matsui, and I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, M-A-T-S-U-I. So we still see the 500, 600s imported and 700s and various other models imported beginning in 79 by Matsui, but that didn't last long. It only lasted for a couple of years because of U.S. economy. If you were alive like I was in 79 and 80, you remember what the oil business was like, or the fossil fuel business was like, and the economic slowdown in the United States during that period of time. So in 1981, SKB started doing some subcontract work for Moroku, another Japanese firearms manufacturer, notably making Brownings. So SKB was actually making barrels and stocks for the Browning A5 as subcontractor to Moroku. So even with that subcontracting work, there wasn't enough business for SKB to really keep afloat. So in 83, the SKB, the family that owned SKB, sold it within Japan to another family, and it reorganized as a new SKB Arms Company. So right after that, in 1984, new SKB contracted with Roy Weatherby and began producing shotguns under the Weatherby name for importation. So the Orion, the Athena, they were doing semi-automatics for Weatherby during that time. So in 87, a company called GU Incorporated began importing SKB branded shotguns into the United States. SKB is now flush again. They're at full capacity in their factory. They are exporting guns worldwide again in 1987. So 2008, again, economic slowdown. Worldwide, SKB ends up closing its doors, and the factory closed in 2009. So in 2010, GU Inc., that company that was importing the guns, bought all the parts, work in progress, the name, and everything, and SKB established in the United States under that brand name. The guns are now made in Turkey. The various SKB guns that are produced are now made in Turkey by two companies, AKAS and AKDAS, AKDAS, in Turkey, which they're Turkish, yes, but you can't really throw rocks at Turkish shotguns anymore. Virtually, I mean, probably 80% of the shotguns out there on the market now are made in Turkey. And some fairly fine quality shotguns are being made in Turkey. Kimber, when Kimber was doing shotguns, those were Turkish. So the Smith & Wesson Elite shotguns, those were Turkish. So they've come a long way, put it that way. But all that to say that the SKB of today is not the SKB that produced this shotgun. So, or the SKB that in the 1960s, when we started talking about SKB shotguns, probably not politically correct to put this advertising out today, but one of their taglines was SKB, the leading gun makers of the Orient. I don't know that you could actually get by with putting that in print today, but they certainly did back then. So the basic guns in line, when the over and unders, well, they had side-by-sides, the 100 and 200, and then submodels of that, and then the 500 and 600 in the, I believe we've done a video on the side-by-side, but the 500, 600 in the over and under line. So we're going to put up some catalog stills. We've got the catalogs from all the years that Ithaca produced, or Ithaca had the SKB line in their catalogs. We have those catalogs still, so we're going to put those up there as well. So the 600 and the 500, 600, the difference, the internals are the same between the 500 and the 600. The difference is going to be the cosmetics. The 600 has a little bit more of this engraving. Now, in the early Ithaca days, this is hand engraving. It was hand engraving with some gold fill, gold wash in there. And then later on, as the years progressed, then they began to be roll stamp engraving, not hand engraved. But this would be a hand engraved shotgun. Still not a super expensive gun, but this would be a hand engraved gun. And initially they're blue receivers. So the first year was 12 gauge only, 2 3/4 receivers only. And then by 1972, we see 20 gauge show up. 20 gauge shows up in the 1968 catalog, 2 3/4 inch, and then the 3-inch Magnum 12 gauge shows up in the 72 catalog. 20 gauge 3-inch in 1968, 12 gauge 3-inch 1972. So these guns, one thing unique about the SKB series of over and unders is the barrel selector. The barrel selector is actually here. Let's clear the gun before we start handling it, just so the internet warriors know that there's nothing in the gun, right? So nothing in the gun. So, and we'll take it down here in just a second. So the barrel selector is here on the trigger. When the button is pushed all the way to the right, that's the lower barrel. Button pushed all the way to the left is the upper barrel. And the upper barrel on this gun is modified. The lower barrel is improved cylinder. On the Ithaca series guns, top barrel is always going to be the tighter of the chokes. These were available in mod improved cylinder, mod full, and then of course they did a skeet version in skeet. Now, one thing about the SKB series of guns, whether they're Ithaca production and especially non-Ithaca importation, the rules are kind of out the window as to how these guns would be configured. Different importers would order runs in different choke constrictions. So there's no, I guess, one size fits all as to how these guns were configured. Standard configuration would be mod full or IC modified or skeet. In these Ithaca importation guns anyway. 26 and 28 barrels, some 30-inch barrels, and 12 gauge. So that said, we have selective ejectors on this gun. Even on the field grade guns, there were selective ejectors. And the safety is non-auto. So in other words, unlike other brands of over and under shotgun, when you open the gun and close it back, safety does not automatically engage on this gun. You have to physically put it to safety. Or you can not and just leave it on fire and then go straight back to shooting the birds. So one thing that I did want to point out about that is a lot of people not familiar with the gun think that this barrel selector is a cross-bolt safety. It is not. And they'll mistakenly engage the safety, think the safety is engaged. accidentally or intentionally pull the trigger back, of course the gun will fire, because that's not a safety. So be aware that's the barrel selector. The button visible or pushed out to the right, that is for the lower barrel on these guns. So in the 1969 catalog in the SKB, we start to see the Model 700 show up. The Model 700 is more embellishment, nicer wood, and then we start to see skeet sets available. And the skeet set was this gun in 20 gauge with a 28-inch barrel set and a 410 barrel set. There were no 1220 barrel sets that I'm aware of. So the two different size frames, right? So this frame, the 20 gauge frame, 20, 28, and 410, a 3-barrel skeet set. Highly collectible, highly sought after today when you find them. So another variant that we see occurs from 1973 to about 1975 was the Model 680, which was a 600 without the pistol grip. It was a straight English style stock. So we see that out there. It's a rarer variant, a little bit more money there. And then in beginning about 1972 is when we see the finish on the 600, the receiver finish, go to a coin finish or a silver plated type finish, still with the engraving, but plated silver. So that's really about the only way to date these. There's no serial number list that I'm aware of. This particular gun has a serial number starting with letters, Charlie, Frank, and then digits. And there's a lot of confusion on the internet. Does that mean anything? Does that mean crown grade? Does that mean field grade? Does that mean whatever? There's a CM prefix, and some people say it means Monte Carlo stock. Well, all the trap guns had Monte Carlo stock. It doesn't mean Magnum. There doesn't seem to be any correlation to that. So to my knowledge, there's no real way to date one of these by serial number. So we have to look at features. So this particular gun is a 20 gauge. So we know 1968, blued finish Model 600. They should be coin finished starting in 72. So 68 to 72 is probably going to be as close as I would be comfortable in trying to pin this down. That said, could it be later? Yep, it could be. But we have the hand engraved blued receiver, so we think it's probably an earlier gun. So that said, I don't know. I'm not the be-all, end-all of Ithaca lore, especially the SKB Ithacas. I do pretty well on the 37s, but the slide action guns, but not these that much. Know a little bit about them. So what do we look for? And this is a couple of the big questions about what do you look for on these guns, what breaks? Well, these guns do have a reputation of breaking firing pins. That said, and the firing pins, yes, they are available, number one. Number two, they're not that easy to take out. A company called Pacific Tool makes a tool to remove the bushing to take the firing pins out. It's like $22. I'd recommend if you're going to own and shoot one of these shotguns, you go ahead and spend the money, get that tool. The firing pins are available. New old stock firing pins are available from various places. Numerich or Gun Parts Corp has them. There are aftermarket, probably better alloy firing pins out there that you can buy for that. So I would recommend getting those. I would recommend getting hammer springs. I would recommend getting ejector springs for this gun if you're going to shoot it a lot. The other thing that goes bad on these guns, or that has a problem, is the wood. So the wood, especially on these 600s, we see a lot of them, I say a lot of them, we see quite a few of them come through that have cracked the fore end out through here. So you have this is called, by the way, keyways. So there's two different types of fore end, the round holes and the keyway holes. These are keyways. But we see them where they crack down here, and they're basically in two pieces. SKB says they have, the current SKB says they have some wood available for the older SKB Japanese guns. They're not specifically listed as to what they have on the website. That said, you can scatter around on the interwebs and find the wood. Bear in mind that the checkering patterns changed. There are a lot of changes in the production years on the wood from part to part. The distance between these holes changed. So you have to make sure that you're getting the right piece for your particular gun. It can be it can be difficult, and it will definitely be expensive. Just some generic pricing I looked this morning before we did this video. If you were going to buy factory original wood, the buttstock and the fore-end, it'd be about $400 is what I'm finding. So it can get pricey. So that's one thing to look at. So that's really the only things that I've ever had to do on these guns is firing pins, the springs, which are normal wear items regardless of brand, and the wood on occasion when someone comes in that's really busted up, and then it becomes, does the customer want to spend that kind of money to put the shotgun right again? So let's evaluate the gun. Let's look at it from the perspective of originality, condition, and scarcity, right? So scarcity, not so much. They're getting scarcer just from attrition over time. So the higher grades, as we get into the 700s and the 800s, of course they are scarcer. They weren't produced in the volume that the 500s and 600s were. And then you can pigeonhole it further into time periods of production, if you will. And then the 3-barrel sets, you know, the 20 gauges probably bring more money than the 12s. So you can go on and on with that. So that said, this is a fairly generic 600 field gun in 20 gauge. The chokes, the less constricted chokes, mod improved and skeet, probably will definitely bring more than mod full. I think mod IC is probably the best choke combination. Great little dove and quail gun for sure. So then we have to look at condition and then originality, right? So this gun is original except for this pad. The field guns were not padded except the Magnum guns, the one when they started doing the 3-inch 12 gauge, they came padded. And then the trap guns came padded, things of that nature. But the field guns were not. So this is an added pad. It's very well done. And the pad's still in nice condition. So this really doesn't detract that much and money-wise, because it's not really in super collectible grade. I mean, it's obviously been handled, obviously been shot. So it's not a super collectible gun. It's still a very nice shooter, and this kind of enhances that. So I wouldn't really consider this too much of a monetary detraction for this particular gun. So now we start looking at condition, right? So we're not cracked through the rest of the stock. We're not cracked at the bottom of the fore-end. Those, to me, are kind of the deal breaker if I'm buying one of these guns, because we just can't put that kind of money into it and come out. So let's go ahead and pop it apart and see what it looks like inside. So we're going to, this particular shotgun, we have the latch here to bring that open. And we can see in here, we see the serial number matches the serial number here. So the serial number on the Ithaca is in this little cutout right here, and we have, the fore-end iron is also serialized to match that. So, and then we see the ejector sears and springs in there. So we can now roll it open and out, right? So here we see nice engine turning on the sides of the block here. We have good spring tension on both of these extractor ejectors. And here's where, well, first of all, we see the barrel set serialized, but we also see, you'll find the choke constrictions on the barrel here, not visible when the gun is assembled, but it's visible when the barrel set's off. So we see mod and imp, mod for the top barrel, improved cylinder for the secondary barrel. These barrels are chrome lined, so it's always a good idea just to check through there. It's unusual for the bore to be hurt on these guns, but I guess it can happen. There haven't been any choke tubes added. The Ithaca guns were not, were all fixed choke. They weren't adjustable choke tubes unless somebody's put them in there. And bearing in mind, putting removable or replaceable choke tubes in these is a little bit more difficult because of the chrome lining. It requires a carbide tipped, carbide tooling to get that done. So now we're going to look at the breech face. We make sure there's no peening over, or the firing pin holes come through. This cross bolt right here, there's this little spring right there. So we have good protrusion of the locking block here. So that's nice and smooth. A lot of people tend to oil. This particular thing does not require any oil at all. And in fact, SKB suggested that not be oiled so it stays. I mean, it doesn't mean you have to necessarily dry it off, just don't aggressively oil it. So we have good return of the top lever here. This is moving freely. Now the other thing to check is the inertia block, and we'll check that in just a second when we pop the gun back together. It's got an inertia block here, so the gun requires recoil to reset from one trigger to the next, or from one sear to the next. So unlike, say, a Browning Satori or one of the other recoil-operated guns, if you have a bad shell in one chamber, you have to manually move this selector to fire the next one. If recoil is not there to operate the inertia block on the inside of this receiver, then you have to actually click this back and forth. Simply moving the safety will not reset to the next barrel like it will on some other brands. So we're pretty happy with this, just all in all, in the condition of, we don't see any active rust or anything. So to put it back together, this lever should lock when it goes to that side. So I get to fumble with it. There it goes. So our lever went back midway. We're not stuck out. We're not, our locking block is not sticking out on the side, so we're pretty happy with the way that gun's locking up. So now, with the gun cocked, safety on, no bang, off, bang, simulate a little recoil, bang again. So we're happy with the inertia block. It's always a good idea to have somebody, when you buy one of these guns used, have somebody pull that stock off, clean that inertia block, just do a general light cleaning of the inside of the receiver. It's not going to hurt anything. That way you get to check springs and whatnot. So we're pretty happy with the mechanical condition of this gun. The scarcity of the gun, not so much. Originality of the gun, the only problem we have is the pad, not really a problem like we discussed. So what would you expect to pay for something like this? In the Ithaca SKB series, the money varies widely. Sub $1,000 typically is where these guns are going to live in the field grade guns, all the way up to a few $1,000s for the 3-barrel sets and things of that nature. The higher grade are the rarer pieces. So for this gun, anywhere between $800 to say $1,100 would be about what you'd expect to pay for it. Somebody that's wanting a great dove gun or quail gun, this would be a good selection for them. Now, we're not trying to sell the gun on YouTube. That's not the point. In fact, I believe this gun is not available currently. So we're not trying to do that, just trying to give you an overall idea of what you should expect to pay for one of these. So the Ithaca SKB 600, the 500 is identical except for less engraving here. So if you like what we're doing here on the channel, guys, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. It'll let you know when we post videos. We try to do it at least once a week. And drop a comment. We read them. Let us know what you think, or if there's a particular model that you want us to take a look at. We'll certainly give it a shot, try to do that. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.